Greetings, everyone. Nate the Nerdarch here from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. With me, I have Nerdarchist Dave and our buddy Kurt.
Hey, everyone. So we were discussing off right before this went live what the topic was going to be today, and I was thinking pretty hard about how different people come up with characters. We're not necessarily just how you build a character mechanically, but how you come up with a personality for a character that you want to play in game. Apart from because there are many, many different ways in which I know people come up with characters, and some people don't come up with characters at all. The page is just a page of numbers, and that's what they have. So I wanted to ask the Nerdarchists how they go about forming the personality for a character after they've sort of mechanically built it on the character sheet.
Oh, and before we do that, I just wanted to mention Kurt is part of the Nine of the Nag, and I neglected to mention that. So he's one of our very special sponsors at the Patreon levels.
Yes, and also, Kurt has actually been a bit of a hero to Nerdarchy in the past.
Yes, that as well.
I don't know how much, we haven't discussed how anonymous he wanted to be or not, but he helped us out way back when we were having a lot of trouble with software and hardware with a very generous donation. Some of you guys may have been around long enough to remember when our videos were like a bad kung fu theater movie with the dubbing, and he was very generous towards us. So actually, this is the first time speaking to you virtual face-to-face. I would like to personally thank you. We really do appreciate that. You helped us out tremendously.
You're welcome. I was glad to do it.
And so character personality. So a lot of times I kind of have an idea when I'm forming a character, but then as the game goes on, I think the game tends to form that character as well. I think, if you're really striving to excel at role playing, that's the area to get into where your character can be fluid and he can grow as a person. It's like any movie story that you've ever watched or read. If the characters don't change, it's not realistic, and I also find it not entertaining after a while. It's one of the reasons why I used to really enjoy R.A.'s Salvatore's book with Dritz Duerden, but after 20, 30, or 100 books, whatever he's written at this point, the character is the same character from the very first time we meet him. Nothing seems to ever change. An example of my most recent character is there's something I do with him that's kind of subtle, and I we only play once a month, so I don't know if the other players even know about it, but part of it is I play off of Nate's character, and because his character has this perception of Uthgar as being very dwarfy, he kind of turns up his dwarfiness when he speaks to Nate's character. He does the same thing with the elf in the library as well. But when he's actually dealing with the Analasalar, his friend, it gets dialed way back. It's actually, in his mind, it's a joke that he plays on people who stereotype him.
He's a troller for people who stereotype him.
Yes.
You're just reinforcing Arbalasan's already understood knowledge of dwarves as far as he's concerned.
So I as the player have made a game out of what I believe Uthgar has made a game of it, and that might change too if our friendship becomes closer and a little less closed-minded as well. And I also treat the other people in the party differently too, according to how they address him.
Do you use do you ever start with a character that you've read about or seen in a movie and try to play a similar personality to what that character had?
Yes. If we go way back to 3rd edition, when I played my, I call him like a Justicar character, but the idea was he was a paladin that had was a thief before that, lost his hand, and replaced it with a hammer. And I believe I followed the guy. I think I followed Tyr as his deity, and I totally with that character. I was trying to channel Judge Dredd for certain.
See, I know when I started gaming back in 1982, I was 10 years old. So my character really was just a collection of numbers to start with. And then we had one campaign where our characters just got so ridiculously powerful that playing them just mechanically no longer made any sense because there was virtually nothing they couldn't beat, nothing they couldn't do. That was the game where me and my friends actually developed different personalities for our characters, somewhat arrogant murder hobo-y personalities for our characters. But it was sort of a breaking out, and it changed the game for us. As suddenly it really did become much more about the role playing and less about just mechanical combat and who can I beat up. I mean, all of my characters to some extent are me. There's always something about my personality that remains, I think. But I am I'm very much more interested now in developing a character that is in some way different from me. And I do similar things. I have different relationships with different characters in the party, and usually what I try to do to start with, if I don't have an idea in mind, is I read a lot of history. So I pick somebody from history. Like recently, I made a character based on John Hawkwood, who was a medieval adventurer, really an adventurer in Italy. He ran a mercenary company in Italy for a long, long time. And I really tried to base it on him. He was trying to get money and trying to build his name. And these were the things that drove him. And he didn't really care if he was getting his men killed, as long as he was taking the most lucrative contracts he could find and not getting himself killed. He was okay with that.
He kind of sounds like some of the bosses I've worked for in the past, to be honest with you. I want to interrupt you for a quick timeout so we can do our roll call, guys.
They've already started sounding off.
Yeah, I already asked them in the chat where they're from. And we got Greece, Florida, Sweden, New York, Georgia. Hey, Golden King, the Aqua Muffin, I Freppy, Brad Scary, Vigilis, Gurgis. How do you say that, Nate? That last one. Are you looking at the chat?
Vigilis, Giorgio?
Yeah,
Giorgio?
yeah. We got some more Sweden, New Jersey, Florida, Rhode Island. We also got people starting to email us asking if they can get into our games, and they're local to us. Like, the table is so full already. Southern California. Actually, I think someone wanted to know if they could help out too. I think they want Kyle's job. Close enough, Nate. And I was talking to Ted. I was like, perhaps we have to have a death match between would-be interns. Trial by combat.
Where you start off as the intern of the intern.
Yeah.
You're his gopher.
It's always good to keep your intern on their toes and let them know they can be replaced.
Or murdered. No, Nerdarchy does not condone murder in any shape, way, or form in the real world. Only make believe.
Not even uppity interns. Oh, by the way, Kyle S is in the chat, just to let you know.
I know. I saw him. Please, it's more fun to mention that if he's in the chat. I told him the pay would be horrible and his bosses are assholes. I warned him ahead of time. We got Arkansas in there, Minnesota. Highlander rules. Highlander does rule. So we got a little bit light today. It's Friday. You guys must be exhausted from the week or working or something. But all right, sorry to cut you off, Kurt. But let's stuff back in there.
Right. I was just saying I like to look to historical figures if no fictional one is coming to mind immediately. So there's a lot of different colorful characters throughout history. Even just like, one character I pulled out of history who I'm using none of his personality whatsoever, but the entire thing is just based on the guy's name. The alchemist Paracelsus's real name was part of his real name, at least, was Theophrastus Bombastus. And I was like, that is a great bard name. So in a game, I'm currently playing a bard named Theophrastus Bombastus.
That's an amazing name.
It is. It's great. We got a lot of New Jersey in the house today, plus England. Yeah, instead of mixing concoctions and chemicals, he's mixing lyrics, huh?
Yes, actually, he has done the occasional rap. Or rather, I have done the occasional rap on his behalf.
Nice.
So, I'm unfortunately subjected the rest of my party to that.
It's the only way to do it. Yeah, you know what? We got some Germany in the house. I know where everybody's at today because we're almost up to 40 viewers right now. They're doing what I stopped doing to come do this live chat. Guys, I love you so much. I stopped at after episode 3 of Iron Fist to come do this live chat when really I just wanted to keep watching Iron Fist, and now my son is going to pass me because for some odd reason he's watching it on his phone, but he's where he always Netflix from, which is so far I think the critics can suck it because I'm 3 episodes in and digging it.
Oh, it's getting bad criticism.
Yeah, they're getting a lot of bad criticisms on it.
I don't pay attention to most of the internet when they talk about stuff.
So my biggest problem, Kurt, with coming up with different character personalities is I don't get to play enough.
Yeah, I find that to be the issue as well.
I found that once I started DMing, I had the same problem. It's just you have it in sort of a mini form because now you've got to come up with some distinguishing characteristic for 1,000 different characters as opposed to a few distinguishing characteristics for one.
Yeah, I mean that is true, but I think the difference is when you're the player, you kind of you get to live in that character, for a bit with the campaign. When you're a DM, they walk on and off the the set per se. And they don't get nearly as much screen time. And as the DM, I always wanted to make it about the players anyway. So I only ever come up with like 1 or 2 interesting traits about them, and only if the players continually go back to that NPC, do they get developed further. So it's ultimately it's in the player's hands as to how far those NPCs get developed. Even your villains. Like they're going to be there for a little while. They're going to get murdered, right? I think right now with the Scarlet Sisterhood, I'm really having to delve into to 2 of the characters more so than I've delved into too many in the past, and that's Sheena Silversong, which is the alchemist that works at the library because they keep going back to her, and Harak, because one of my characters is kind of starting to date him, I think,
or squeeze him for information about the town.
Right. Well, he thinks he's going on dates. He's working.
That's going to be some bad half-orc anger happening after he finds out.
He's just going to be a sad half-orc. He's going to probably get his poor heart broken.
Yeah.
For me, I know that like they have the bonds and clause and all that in the player's handbook. I don't find those as helpful as maybe I thought I would initially. I find them hard to get into sometimes, just selecting something from the list and having that one sentence there. So I almost always have to come up with my own. I've tried it. I mean, I've pulled them out of the player's handbook and tried to use them, and almost invariably I wind up not being able to translate them into the session as easily as I'd like.
I built Arbalason, my nature cleric elf, off of that. And what I did was I looked at that as a guideline, and then I wrote my own sentence. So one of the things is he's really mercantile minded because of his family background.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a little overcharged when it comes to that because he's the 7th son in an elven family, which is kind of awkward because they usually don't get that high in the first place. But he's also kind of like lowest on the totem pole of merchanting in that family. So he went off on his own to venture in and make a name for himself. And one of the things that I found was with him, he kind of exaggerates those traits in which he wants to gain esteem in, or some kind of like competency in. So he's really kind of obsessed with deal making. So he makes deals with money, but he also thinks that every encounter, it's not caricature of that. Like I don't try and deal with goblins who are trying to kill us, but if there's time to talk or discuss stuff, I try and figure out how we can make an arrangement. And sometimes that's terrible and it doesn't work. And sometimes some nosy dwarf gets in the way when you're trying to get some mercenary pixies on your side. For a fair trade, it was totally fair, but some people mess up my deals, and I think that's okay because in essence they're making their own kind of deal, and I can respect that. but it's like cutting into my territory. It's the way I see something. And he's also, so one of the things was, I believe in fairness and I'm like lawful good. So I try and act, commit correct or right actions. And what I think of as right and correct actions are things where both parties can mutually agree upon an exchange, and they're both not happy but satisfied that they've come through with like a better than they had before, or at least if they were going to go into a bad situation, like if a goblin's going to be killed if he doesn't surrender, and we get him to surrender, then he might be a prisoner but he's still alive, like that kind of, and maybe he'll give us information instead and be treated well, that kind of thing. So there's that. He starts off with this. He starts off with this. Hey, everybody. So he kind of assumes the best of people, and he also assumes the order of people. So he's lawful good, and he assumes everybody else is either that or trying to be that. And it's hard for him to start as a baseline. Yes, this thing is evil, or this person is evil, or this is wrong. So it takes him a while to. He's kind of like an optimist in people. And some people are just going to stick it to you on a deal, and some people are going to rip you off on purpose or lie and steal. And he doesn't assume that that's the go-to for people. So he does have a bit of an issue with that aspect of society and deals. So it's kind of a flaw, but it's also kind of like a directive for his life. So that's like one part of his personality, is that fairness of dealing. And
how do you develop this personality for the character?
I went with I wanted to start off as a reluctant cleric. So I start off as a reluctant cleric through the idea of I don't think I'm worthy. I've had a bad experience with being the lowest person on the totem pole of my family, in essence. So being the youngest and being kind of like extra in a way, like why does an elven family need 7 sons? Well, seven children. So I've always kind of been like the out of my family group, and so I tried to. So I have like a reluctance in that I'm not worthy of being chosen by a deity, and I also have the reluctance of not wanting to go down that path. So I've got like double reluctance as coming into my clerical power of my nature cleric. And because I already have a drive in life, I already had a plan on how everything was going to go. I was going to go adventure. I was going to go off to a far-flung land. I was going to make all these contracts, really good deals, and basically set up a situation where my family would hear of my renown elsewhere and understand that I had made it and that I had done well by the family. And I'm from a noble house, so that's kind of like a super big deal, because it's not just, we're just some guys who are good at business. Like I have a whole lineage to uphold. So I had a lot driving me towards not being some guy in the woods preaching to people about the power of nature and stuff. So I was reluctant on several fronts. And then I also have, kind of like a self-esteem issue where I don't feel I'm worthy to be chosen, and that I'm not going to really succeed at it. And over time, that's changed through different things that have gone on. Right. But the starting character, that was the concept. I was starting with the concept of reluctant cleric. I never played one before. I thought it was pretty cool because it kind of jives with that kind of you don't think yourself worthy of something. So I kind of totally relate to that. So so that was something I wanted to play and portray, and like I felt it was really good for. It had a really good character arc, is what I saw in my mind of where it could go. So that's kind of what I started with. And then I developed the reasons why he wouldn't want to be it. And I wanted to have like 2 or 3 pronged attack to that. So it wasn't just, I'm not worthy. Okay, now I am worthy. No, it's like, there's a lot of conflict going on in his inner self on what to do and why.
So did you start with the personality and then develop a backstory that fit it? Or did you start with the backstory and then figure out what his views on life were?
In this case, I started with the backstory of the concept of a reluctant cleric, and then I filled in the spaces I had also not really ever played a merchant before, so I was like, oh, well, I was like a whole bunch of firsts I wanted to kind of shove into one character for 5th edition, and I knew they were going to be recorded, so I was like, I also want to try and like do my best at like bringing some kind of like good story arc for the character. So I felt like, I was like, okay, Reluctant Cleric is where I start, and then from there I moved to a more reasons why he's reluctant, and I chose his own self. He doesn't believe in himself. And he also does, and not only else, he has other life goals. So he doesn't believe in himself. He's a noble, so he has other things that he's supposed to be doing, not be some cleric in a religion. And he is also supposed to be excelling at being a merchant. So he has 3 things that are preventing him from accepting the fact that a deity has chosen him to be some kind of powerful figure.
So, couple things. You can always do what Mike Capuchin does, and most of my NPC personalities are based upon my siblings. Makes me wonder how many siblings you have, though. The other thing is I'm waiting for any minute to see Nate get hoisted into the air and carried off by a goblin tribe. And I was just thinking about one of my early characters with the first incarnation of this D&D group, and that was my Chaos Dwarf, who was a cleric of chaos. And I don't even remember his name. I just know he had, the red beard, shaved head with, the chaos swirl kind of tattooed on his head. And that was actually an evil party, and he was a manipulator. He was always manipulating things to create the most chaos in the world possible. And through sheer faith in chaos alone, he actually eventually created a clan of chaos dwarves. He kind of willed them into existence. And Ted's character was like, he was trying to build the ultimate soldier and general. And my character kept manipulating things behind the scenes to make him a king and turn him into a tyrant. And then we had a couple other like crazy players in that game. I don't remember if Nate was in that game or not. I remember we had the one player we call Psycho was in that game with us, and he was playing a Scion, and I needed him to do stuff for me, and I knew he was going to betray me. So the one weakness in a lot of the psionic powers in 2nd edition, they did not have many, but you needed to see what you were doing. And because it was 2nd edition, I was able to just cast blindness on him, and then he was like completely at my mercy. So in that case, like when I was designing the personality for that character, he was just kind of crazy, and his goal was to just sow seeds of chaos throughout the universe. So that was one of the ones. And everything I did was kind of like I would bounce off of that idea, like, will this create more craziness around him? And if the answer is yes, more than likely he would do it. But at the same time, he was kind of subtle in the way he would do things. So it was all manipulation and machinations behind the scenes type stuff.
I remember once I played a character who, this was actually 3rd edition, but he wound up basically being kind of a warlock. Certainly in 5th edition terms, he would have been a warlock. His backstory was that he had visited some long forgotten temple with a group. He was some minor functionary in the group, but everybody wound up being killed by the demon that was trapped inside. And my character was the one who made a deal with this demon just to live. But he was then trying to subvert the deal constantly by battling evil as much as he could. But his ultimate goal was he wanted to get rid of all of his powers. Everything he got from leveling up, he wanted to find some way to purge himself of all of this diabolical, demonic power. And he was so sort of like, it cost him so much of his soul, and the character's concept was just so depressing that I found myself really not enjoying playing him because he was miserable.
He made you miserable. He's not even a real person. That's hilarious.
Luckily, we did manage to finally meet a demigod, and I actually got him purged of all of his power. And so the DM's like, okay, I guess you're a 5th level commoner.
Just what I always wanted.
Well,
Yeah, but
that is what he wanted, and I was sort of glad to be rid of him and roll up a new character.
that's a nice in game and out of game experience. It's like, oh, finally I've rid myself of this curse, and you're like, finally I've rid myself of this character without just quitting on him.
So in the comments, they're in the chat, they're chomping at the bit for Mystic Goodness, which we're going to be doing Monday morning. We'll be releasing that into the wild.
I know, except I'm not on it, so it's not complete.
Oh, you're not on the Mystic. You didn't write it. No, we didn't film it yet.
Oh, okay. I thought you knew because you filmed it already. We're talking about filming it on Saturday. Gotcha.
Yes, sorry, Saturday tomorrow. We were actually is one of our shoot days, and we'll be filming the Mystic video. We've gotten emails, comments, Facebook messages. They're like, "Are you guys going to do the Mystic? How about the Mystic? Do you guys know there's a Mystic? And by the way, did I mention Mystic?" But for anybody that is interested, Nerdarchy, we always do our UAs Monday morning after it comes out, the week after it comes out, just because the way our filming schedule kind of works. Nerdarchy does not live on a compound with each other, just waiting for something to happen so we can shoot a video.
That could be a Patreon level reward, though.
Yeah, a really, really high one.
Yeah, $80,000 on Patreon. We buy our own compound.
Yeah.
Were people, I can't see the chat, were people afraid you were going to just skip this one, not do the Mystic ever?
Maybe. I don't know. You know, I guess a lot of people just don't know our how we schedule things, I guess. But I mean, since they've been releasing UAs, we've been pretty much like clockwork, putting them out that following Monday. So it just takes, like, generally on most things we're a week behind talking about it, just because something will come out, then we'll shoot on it, and then that following week those videos get released.
That also gives us time to look at it and read it and think about it in terms of the rest of the game, instead of just, oh, I read it, let's go talk about it right now.
Well, so there is that as well. We get a little time to absorb it in. I mean, we still get things wrong all the time, but hey, it's all part of the process. We never claim to be perfect.
Have you play tested any of the UA material?
I am playing my first character from UA, but he has not done anything but roleplay so far. But so far as a roleplay, there is nothing broken. I can tell you that much. I'm playing a Stone Origin sorcerer.
When we did Nerdarchy Saves the World, we played the techno stuff.
Oh yeah, we did use the modern stuff. I didn't. I just played a dwarf barbarian.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. The rest of you guys tested it.
Yeah, and I thought the Mystic at that time was pretty interesting. Don't know exactly how it would go without having grenades and assault rifles. I'm not really sure how it would go, but it worked really well with grenades and assault rifles.
Everything's better with grenades and assault rifles.
Yeah, even a wizard can be a low-level wizard can be great with an assault rifle.
Well, during that UA playtest, what we learned was using grenades and assault rifles were probably going to be better than anything you could do in the game.
Yeah, I mean, when you had access to them.
Yeah.
There's all these issues. I mean, someone heat metals your gun, but that's another discussion. Dealing with modern rules and the D&D archetypes.
When they came out with the Mystic Take 2, we had a player who play tested that. At least he was level 8, I believe. And there were things that could kill our entire party that he could solo. So we were thinking it was overpowered, but we also figured out that we don't think he was actually counting his power points.
Was he max sonic smiting every time?
He was doing a lot of damage every time, and we weren't given an opportunity to rest. So we were all like out of spells, and our archer was even complaining that he was almost out of arrows. But the Scion was still fine. The Mystic was just going strong.
Yeah, I'm thinking he might have not been counting his psionic points there.
Cheating is the best way.
Everything is OP if you cheat properly.
Yeah.
I know I didn't see the second part, but I know you did like a 2-parter on the mass combat rules.
Yeah, so the one was us like evaluating the rules, and the other one was like we did like a 15-minute play test of them to see how they worked out. And then even after we did that play test and had that discussion, then me and Nate had some further discussions, and what we found out is 80 knights could totally shred 100 ogres after we mathed it out based off of the numbers. Just
So
using the
does that
NPC knight.
I mean, back to the drawing board on the mass combat rules.
Pretty much. They really do break down once you start using things that are a little more pumpy. Because I think what it worked out to, a contingent of 80 knights mounted, equals like their battle rating is 160. Well, the ogres are at 100, so they're 60 above, so they would just get decimated by a cavalry. And then you can just imagine, 400 orcs trying to face off against those same knights. It gets even worse and more ridiculous. So
yeah, that was a major issue. It's just, I think it works well if you're like humans with spears versus humans with swords, and you just had a whole giant pile of them. And you're like, all right, how do we figure out who wins over the entirety of the fight? And that's what I think that's from, is, that kind of thing. But once you start mixing units and doing weird things like having monster units, the scale goes too far away.
We just had a game this past week where I don't want to say what our DM did to prep. I think he was planning on having mass combat, and he told us that there would be mass combat. And almost the first thing we did was run away. So, although to be fair, there was this Godzilla-like monster that was blasting everything. The smart thing that anyone would have done in real life is run away. So we were just being realistic.
Or in D&D, you just ask him, how much work did you put into this? Oh yeah, we're definitely running away.
Well, he's commented in the past, like he'll make some little throwaway line, like he mentioned there was like an abandoned prison at one point, and we're like, oh, we have to go check out the abandoned prison. But he did not expect that. So he just had to come up with an abandoned prison on the fly.
Oops.
And then every time he comes up with something, we're always like, nah.
that sounds like a typical D&D game to me.
Yeah, you've got a plan, and the players screw with it the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. So, how many of you guys that are on today in the chat? Let me know. We're on yesterday and call it Brian Feaster's interview with us, or hanging out with us, and what you thought of that. Were you able to catch that yesterday, Kurt?
I caught it later in the day. I didn't see it.
Oh, cool. So,
which I have to say, I've only caught one of the live streams earlier this week. I think it was Mondays. And I really have enjoyed this. A lot of it, though, for the comments. Like, I like hanging out in the comments and seeing what people are talking about on the side. So, whereas watching it later on recorded, I don't see the comments. I assume there's no way to just save the comments.
No. Like when we do certain things, we'll actually leave the comments up afterwards so we can go back and check them out. But yeah, they come and they go, and the comments is really helpful because of the way the YouTube algorithms work. So they count them as comments for you in interactions, but they take them away. Sadly enough. And, there is always a lot of good discussions going on, people talking back and forth with each other. So me and Nate were talking with Brian Feaster after the interview, and we're talking about us possibly doing a live gameplay of our Open Legend RPG. So I guess what I want to know is, you guys, would you be interested in watching that? And if we do it, what kind of game should we play? It's also one of the things we're thinking about too is I think we have a way we can poll patrons and maybe let you guys get some feedback in the kind of game we do, or the kind of game you guys want to see us play. So one of the things we're talking about is maybe running a game for the staff writers, which again, we also have a couple of them that have like the same problem that many of us dungeon master have, is they're the dungeon master and they rarely get to play in the games. So I think that might be fun. So that's something for you to think about, Kurt. What kind of game you'd like to see us play?
Yeah, we'll have to think about that. I mean, I've read at least the source material for I forget what the name of the world is that they were originally releasing with Open Legend, but that itself seemed interesting. I don't know enough about the system to know what it's best suited for. I mean, I assume it's not just for fantasy.
No, it's actually generic. He made a lot of changes in the design. They're not really changes in the design, but a lot of the language he was using was geared way more towards fantasy and specifically like D&D. Like, so there's different effects you can have, and they give your character different powers, but the way he had them written, they all were like D&D schools of magic. So he's changed it to make it more generic. So
after watching the video yesterday, I'm always up for playing something Star Wars related. So I was interested to go back and try to look at it, which I haven't done yet, to see how easily it could adapt to a Star Wars setting.
I think it would adapt fairly easy to that. Matter of fact, the way the powers are set up, it would be really easy to make force wielders or things from different alien races that might have non-standard abilities as well. It wouldn't be hard at all.
So there you go. That's what I would vote for then.
Star Wars or
even Star Wars, just some sci-fi thing. It's not that I really love fantasy and I love medieval history, but I feel like I don't get enough sci-fi role-playing anymore. so I'm always on the lookout for more sci-fi role-playing games.
Yeah, I could go for that myself.
So apparently Mike Capuch wants me to run one session because he says Cthulhu.
And you only need one session for Cthulhu.
Yeah, you only need one session, then it'll be done. I guess someone was asking about, because Kyle's in there answering questions for us for kind of like the regular stuff we do, which is really cool.
What are I was curious this morning, what are the short videos you're doing? I didn't see whatever short video you released, but I saw you posted on Facebook.
Oh, yeah. So I actually wanted to bring that up anyway. Thank you, Kurt. So basically, in order to expand our reach and maybe reach into audiences we're not getting to, we're having viewers like all you guys submit to us either through you can message me on Facebook or you can email at nerdarchy@gmail.com. Like, say if you're watching one of our videos and there's just one instance that like stands out at you, if you just send us a link of that video with a timestamp, we're going to pull those moments out and put them in, into like I'm just calling them Nerdarchy shorts, and not the kind you wear. And I'm just uploading them directly to Facebook because Facebook hates when you use any kind of external links. And then I'm also, and then I also just throw it up on YouTube around 8 o'clock at night. And I'm trying to clearly mark them so that you guys, if you don't want to watch it because it's only like a 30 or 40-second clip, then you can just skip it. And I want you to see what it is. So this is, I'm not really interested in those. I can just skip those. And like I said, it's just either something interesting, something funny, or something that you found particularly helpful or useful. And those are the kind of things we're looking to pull out and throw out there. And we're probably, right now, I'm putting them on YouTube and putting them on Facebook. We'll probably start shooting them over to Instagram as well. And that's also why they're real short.
Because Instagram likes short.
Yeah, Instagram does like short.
Peter Boldry, Kurt's character could have easily handled Godzilla. Don't let him fool you. I think he might know something about your character that you're not saying.
My character in that game is an odd one in that I tend to play lawful good or lawful neutral characters. I find that easier. He's the most chaotic character I've played in a very long time because he was he's an ex-pirate who found religion, who likes to start bar fights.
Nice.
But
It's
he's
complex.
yeah. I don't know if he could have taken the Godzilla thing by himself. I think he would have gotten killed. Hence we fled.
Just by a little bit. Other people are also asking about, and Kyle was good enough to kind of help out with this as well. But like they want to know why they don't see us playing with the fans. And Kyle did point out we do play one game a month with the fans. We randomly select from. We have a process. Basically, you sign up for our newsletter. It tells you how to get signed up for those games, and your name goes in the hat. If you also happen to be a patron, your name goes in the hat again. We pull 10 names from that list, and we try and find 4 or 5 players. If we can't, and this has happened numerous times, we'll go to the patrons, or we'll go to the Nine of the Nag, the Company of the Nag Facebook group, and we'll fill out the roster from there. But yeah, we always play at least one game a month with you guys.
Yeah, and the game I'm going to be playing next is the 25th, I believe. Next Saturday, not tomorrow.
Yes, yeah. So that is coming up, and honestly, we would love to do a lot more. Just time, it's hard. We don't even game as much as we would really like to. So I see votes from let's see, Castras Lombardo for Sith Evil campaign. I see. Oh, he also is throwing his vote for Firefly or I think that's supposed to be Stargaze, and then Stargate. Let's see. Stephen Waterman, has anyone looked at the game Delta Green? I have not, unfortunately. That's the other thing that sucks. There's way too many cool games come out and not enough time. Especially with us doing Nerdarchy, it makes it really hard to delve in and play a lot of games and do this at the same time and have normal jobs and families. It becomes a lot. A Warhammer campaign would be cool. Yeah, I like the world of Warhammer. I've read a lot of the books, especially Gorchak and Felix. Love those guys. You need an evil game in your life. Oh God, I hate evil games usually. More rants about evil games. Golden King. I recently ran a Star Wars 5e homebrew. It was amazing. Thinking of making it a regular game. That's one of the things that confuses me. I don't know why everyone likes to take their favorite game system and make it into other ones when there's generally other ones out there that are already doing it better. But that's just my opinion. It seems like a lot more work is, I guess, what I'm getting at. To especially some games just don't do other games very well. Like D&D is one of those games that I love, but I don't think D&D does anything else very good other than playing D&D.
Well, when you're using like Roll20 stuff, the D20 system, was that what it was called? I thought the Star Wars for D20 was pretty good.
Yeah, I really liked Star Wars Saga Edition. It didn't do space combat as well as I would have liked, but otherwise I thought it was a pretty good system. I was sad when it was canceled. Fantasy Flight Games, I actually have the books. I've read through them. It looks fantastic, but I don't, having just read the books and not played it yet, I've watched a couple playthroughs, I don't feel like I completely understand it. So I don't know it well enough to run it myself, and I can't find anyone to run it for me locally. So I've yet to play the Fantasy Flight Systems version of Star Wars, but it does look very good.
So systems I would recommend, Open Legend would work well, Cypher system would work well, or the actual Fantasy Flight Games is a lot of fun. It's actually, I feel like that game is way easier to learn by playing it than it is by just reading it. And what happens, especially with the custom dice that influence a lot of what's going on, that's definitely a mechanic that I feel like you pick it up really quick. But if you're just looking at it, it's confusing. And in the beginning, you kind of need a cheat sheet to figure out what symbols what. But once you start getting it, it doesn't take long at all. We only played 4 sessions, and we want to go back to it. But that was a lot of fun. And I think Ted is actually getting ready to do his own doing a campaign with that as well outside of outside of Nerdarchy. He cheats on us all the time. Superhero game, spy game. Yeah, that could be fun too. I do like running some supers. The other thing I was thinking a couple of things. Was one, I could have the patrons vote on and influence the game they want to play, and the other thing is to have a session 0 with whatever ends up being my players, and see what kind of game they want to play, since it's a system that can kind of pretty much handle anything, and it may like end up like an amalgamation of what the patrons want and each of the people in the game want. Could be something like completely crazy. I think it's Gamers on Games as a podcast, and they were talking about running a Cypher System game. And the GM, what he wanted to do was have each player make their perfect character and show up to the game with their perfect character. And then he was going to build the game around that group of characters.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Sorry to interrupt. I gotta get going. I was at the hospital yesterday. I'm not feeling too great, so I'm gonna cut out early.
Now they're gonna all think you're dying, Nate.
Well, I can't guarantee anything. Aren't we all dying a little bit each day?
All right, brother, rest up.
Just survive long enough to review the Mystic.
Yes. Tomorrow I have one thing left to do. So I'll see you around, Kurt. Thanks again for all your help with stuff we've got going on, and thanks for being a Patreon and hanging out with us today. It's really cool. And it was nice to meet you virtually.
Feel better, Nate. Rip Nate. Rip Nate. Feel better. All right, brother. Rest up.
All right. See you.
So on the back to character backgrounds, or at least somewhat related, I've seen debates on Facebook and elsewhere on how long character background should be. Apparently, like, I write for pages and pages when I'm designing my own character most of the time. But some people are like, if you can't get your character background into 200 words, then I don't even want to see it. What's your view on the length of character backgrounds?
Honestly, I think like a paragraph is sufficient. Like I have two different views on this. One, as the DM, I don't want to see more than a paragraph. That's fine. Just give me a feel for your character, maybe an important event or two that happened to him. That's plenty. Now, if you want to write for yourself, that's fine. If that helps you flesh out who your character is and how you're going to play the character, sure, by all means, go ahead. But if every player, and you have 5 or 6 players, has extremely elaborate, long backstories, as a DM, one, it's going to bog you down as far as going through them all. And two, it's like, it becomes too much to expect to appear in one game. Is kind of my take on it.
I would say I've never written a character background with under the assumption that what I'm writing down is going to affect future play. It's almost always how it's one of my methods of figuring out who the character is figuring out what's happened to him in the past. Usually I'll start with some kernel of an idea for what his personality will be. And then through the course of writing out the backstory, I'm able to flesh it out a lot more. But it's always a tool for me. I have had DMs who really have enjoyed the stories and have built on them. But obviously you can never expect that that's going to happen, because otherwise the story would become about me and my character. And, there's 4 or 5 other people at the table also playing characters who probably don't want to play second, second or secondary or tertiary characters in the story of me.
I feel like too, it's like, you kind of know who your players are, and like some players you may not want them to write excessively for you and be expected to read it, and others you're going to be like, oh, I can't wait to read this. So you're going to get all different levels of involvement there, and then you just have players that don't want to, like, they don't care. They're going to show up with their character. If you're lucky, there's a name on it. That kind of thing. And I've also seen players that like to figure out their backstory actually as they play, and kind of like make it up as they go. Mm-hmm. So I think all of it works, right?
Right. I would say this. My one bit of advice for players is don't write all of your character's backstory. Like, you have to leave enough in the way of gaps that when good ideas occur to you later, and they will, you have some period of time in your character's backstory where you can insert this new element that's also going to inform how you're playing him.
But the other thing too is like imagine reading if every book you read, every movie you watched, imagine if you went through the backstory every time for all the characters. No, I don't. It's not enjoyable. People don't enjoy it. Like, and I think with the superhero origin movies, when you've got to hear someone's backstory, their origin one more time, you're like, no. Like the last Batman movie, they did it great because you didn't. They just glossed over it. Basically, they barely mentioned it in passing, and it was perfect, especially for that character because he's so well known.
Sure, I mean, I don't need to hear the origin of Batman again because I mean, there's subtle variations in the origins of different comic book characters, but I know them all pretty well by now. I'm not even a big comic book reader, but I know them all by now because I've seen so many movies. But I'm nerdy enough that I don't know. A lot of books I read, I would spend time going through people's backstories. I read the appendices in Lord of the Rings because I was fascinated by them. I've read the Silmarillion because I wanted to know the backstory.
But like even when there's a backstory, for the most of the time, like if you think about it, it's the way it's presented is usually part of the story.
Right.
It's not like you're reading like the biography. And when we write a backstory for a character, that's written more like a biography of that character than as a story piece, as a part of the story. So I mean, like I said, they all work, and each group is going to have to decide, each individual, like maybe as a player you want to write a long backstory for your character, but your DM doesn't want to read it, so maybe you can give them like the crib notes version, so this way so that character and the backstory appeals to you and the GM at the same time.
Right. I also think, like I said, I write for pages and pages. I also usually have some version of a condensed thing that I can say in the course of 15 seconds, because the other players certainly aren't going to read my backstory, and the DM may or may not read my backstory. So I do want to have some short version I can share with people if I need to.
The character backstory elevator pitch.
Right. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Which is, I think, is a hugely useful tool. I'm just checking the chat real quick. Okay, so good old gamer, do you guys usually start at 1, or do you prefer starting a few levels higher? You know what? I'm trying to think. The game we're running now. Well, I know Ted started his game at level 1 for sure, and I don't remember if I started mine at level 1 or level 3. I like level 3 in 5th edition to start a game at, but I think both of our games started at level 1. The game I'm running, the Scarlet Sisterhood, we started at level 6, and that was really because we had a discussion. I had a discussion with the players. And we had one player that wanted to start really high level, and one wanted to start at first. And I think we agreed on 6th would be a place to start. And so in all fairness, I made them run like 5 sessions, and I'm finally going to level them up. So I guess I mitigated it somewhat. But I like playing the low levels. What about you, Kurt? How do you guys usually do it?
I like playing the low levels as well. Particularly, I think 5th edition makes it better because you're not stuck at first level very long, usually 1 session, and you're out of first level at least. So it doesn't bother me to play first and second level. Most of the games I know of started higher than first level. There is a sense of first and second level still being so low powered that you don't feel like your character can do what you think your character build should be able to do. But I've also played in games where we started at first level and I didn't really have a problem with it because we got out of them pretty quickly, and it helped to build a sense of the character's growth overall for me.
So DM URD asked me, Dave, how do you handle magic items, especially when PCs die? Free for all generally. like, I think they split up that character stuff just before they check his pulse. It's been my experience. But yeah, generally it becomes party treasure, whatever they had on them. But every edition of D&D has always been like that. When you start off, your characters, you never really feel like you can realize the build. I feel like fifth we have more options towards doing that because everything is so compartmentalized. Where in third edition, in general, overall you just had more options, but in fifth editions, the options that you do have seem to mean more.
Well, like take Paladin for example. I was going to be playing a Paladin and realized that at first level you don't even get your oath. So it's like I'm a Paladin of something. I don't know what I believe in yet. I'll decide that in 2 levels. That's a reason to start at third level for that particular class. Is the whole thing. It feels to me like the personality should incorporate the oath very strongly. So either I decide at first level but get no benefits for it, or I start at third level.
Yeah, third level is like a good spot where I've started games for that reason, because it's like you're done. You're not an apprentice anymore. First and second level, you're basically an apprentice unless you're playing a cleric or a wizard, or warlock, where you already have meaningful choices to make. But everybody else, it's like third level. Someone asked, where is it at? Castris Lombardo. What's a good class for a character role playing as a commoner going on an adventure but wants to stay alive? Like he can't learn magic and hates to kill because he's a civil man. Actually, that's pretty easy. That's generally going to be a fighter or a rogue, I think, just because of their abilities are kind of generic and can go in different directions. So they play into that really well. Like you could do Ranger if, by common man, you're saying he was a hunter or a trapper or something like that. To a certain extent, Barbarian, but, again, Barbarians are almost kind of like supernatural in the sense when they rage.
Yeah, I tend to think that I take the classes as sort of very loose guidelines. They're written a little more specifically than I tend to think of them. So I have no problem with a player who wants to play a barbarian who's really like from the city. Like all barbarians are really outlanders from the hinterlands. But if you want to play a barbarian from the city, you're just a guy who gets angry and gets into a lot of fights. That's fine. And a commoner could easily be that. Like he doesn't want to kill anybody. He doesn't want to fight anything. He doesn't know magic. But get him angry, and suddenly he goes crazy on whoever it is that's attacking him in his group. And then he feels really bad about it afterwards.
Well, and also going along that vein too, like maybe he's never raged before, right? Like you're playing him, and it's not until he's on his first adventure or adventure scenario that he rages for the first time because something happens that kind of causes him to snap and lose it.
Right. I think that'd be really kind of fun.
But spellcast any of the spellcasters, it takes some kind of discipline in learning, or at least accurate increments. You need something to cast spells with. Like you could almost say like cleric and druid, like the power gets bestowed on you. Same with the warlock. But because of the way those classes are designed, you still need to have something to cast as either arcane focus or divine focus or something along those lines. So they become a little bit harder to explain.
Right, unless you basically just ignore your spell casting for a little while in game while you sort of you build up to casting your first actual spell.
Yeah, and figure it out. Which that's probably going to be a little less fun,
right?
And depending on the kind of group you have, not less fun. You're going to have to play inept and less effective for a little while, and some groups will not like that at all.
Yeah, I could see it being fun, particularly if it's not going to last that long. First and second level, like I said, they come and go pretty quickly.
No, yeah, I agree.
You could play a spell casting class. One of the issues I do have with 5th edition is that almost all of the classes have spell casting options. It's very spellcaster heavy. So, playing as that commoner, I guess there really aren't as many choices. You can, like you said, there's fighter and rogue. Monk's a little hard just because uh, I'd be perfectly willing to reflavor martial arts as, it's just you develop a fighting style over time and you happen to be pretty good at fighting, it turns out. I'd be willing to reflavor that. But the typical monk is somebody who has actually studied martial arts. So it may or may not fit the flavor somebody's looking for if they're going for commoner who's being exposed to monsters for the first time.
That's actually one of the things that we discussed before, as we want to do a video where we talk about different kinds of monks, different kind of fighting styles, and try and get away from the stereotypical Asian martial arts, which is basically the monk now.
Right. But I've seen monks that were sort of westernized. I fight really well, and it's a lot of reflavoring, I feel, but it's easy to do.
Yeah, I agree. You could definitely play a brawler type character that's just really, really good at it. Maybe a dock worker or something along those lines who gets in the scrapes a lot of times and is a good wrestler. Maybe wrestling is a sport in the village or town you're from. So that could be incorporated as well. It's just a big part of your life. So we've hit our hour mark, so I'm going to wrap things up. I'm trying to keep these to about an hour. And Kurt, I'm so happy you were able to hang out with me today, me and Nate today. That was awesome to get you on here.
Glad to be here.
Once again, I want to thank you for everything you've done for us. I want to thank you guys for watching, and all you guys that support us on Patreon, watch our videos, share our videos, using our affiliate links. All of that helps to make this possible. So thanks, everybody. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Bye, everyone.